Welcome to the Blue Dot, Northern Kentucky's premier political podcast, brought to you by the Kenton County Democratic Executive Committee. Welcome back to the Blue Dot podcast for our weekly roundup, where, as you know, we bring you all the news you need to know in 10 minutes or less. Thanks for joining. I'm Natalie MacDonald.
And I'm Brian Koehl. It's been another busy week nationally, statewide, and locally. But no matter where you look, the headlines remind us that Democrats are fighting for policies that make a real difference in our communities.
As always, for sure. And Governor Beshear not only represented Kentucky, but represented the United States so proudly this week at the World Economic Forum, delivering a message that was a stark contrast to the one that Trump delivered. But before we get to that, let's jump into state news, because a lot is happening right now in Frankfort. The General Assembly kicked off its third week, and we still haven't seen a Republican budget. And the projected $156 million budget shortfall is still looming, and questions about another income tax cut after missing the trigger all still remains unclear. So there's a lot going on, but a lot not going on as well.
Right. Governor Beshear laid out his budget priorities last week, calling for major investments in infrastructure, affordable housing, teacher raises, pre-K for all, and full funding for Medicaid. Those are big ticket items that affect families across the state, and we're watching closely to see how the Republican budget responds to those priorities in coming days.
Yeah, because we talked last week about how those priorities really show what the Democrats are for, especially for those in Kentucky. And while there's no Republican budget, that has not stopped the GOP from moving fast on other priorities, especially education, but it's their priorities. So we're on the bad bill watch here at the Blue Dot. And this week, we're going to highlight two bad education bills introduced by our local Republican state legislatures. We have House Bill 88 and House Bill 289. Brian, do you know anything about these two bills?
Well, I know that Representatives T.J. Roberts, Kim Banta, and Marianne Proctor have teamed up to introduce House Bill 88 to create, quote, Kentucky Education Scholarship Program using federal tax credits established under House Resolution 1, which we all know better as the Big Ugly Bill. People who donate money to special scholarship organizations can get up to $1,700 of that money back as a tax break. The donated money would then be used to help families pay for private school.
Yeah, but unlike the federal program where governors choose whether to opt in, House Bill 88 strips that power from Governor Beshear, of course, and gives it over to the state auditor. So this bill raises concerns not only about constitutionality, but it also raises questions about government overreach. And so this will be the Republicans' fifth attempt at school choice legislation. The previous ones have either failed at the ballot box or have been ruled unconstitutional. They just keep trying there, Brian.
It just seems Republicans just can't recognize that the people don't want what they are peddling.
Right.
It sure would be nice to see them redirect all of the effort and expense that goes into these private school funding schemes towards actually improving our public schools and improving the compensation and benefits for teachers and administrators.
Yeah, and that's not the only education bill our local representatives are moving or trying to move. We have House Bill 289, sponsored by Representatives Kim Banta and Steve Doan, that would impose new mandates on local school districts for non-resident students in enrollment and pupil policy. So under this one, districts would have to standardize the application process for full and part-time non-resident students, and they wouldn't be allowed to charge tuitions to families. But what that does is strip local districts of control and put more pressure on the already stretched public schools. So, we're going to keep tracking these bills. We're going to keep tracking the budget and what it all means for students, families, and communities all across the Commonwealth. So stay tuned for that.
Yes, it's going to be a long haul, even though it's a short legislative session. And on the national front, as usual, there is more going on than can possibly be covered in a 10-minute roundup or even a 10-hour roundup. But let's quickly look at the current status of a couple of the most high-profile topics. And of course, number one, I'm sure all of our listeners are well aware of the willful violence being perpetrated by ICE agents on the streets of Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. But this week, two things happened which may calm the situation down a little. First, a U.S. district judge handed down a preliminary injunction against ICE attacking or detaining peaceful, unobstructed protesters and observers. And this also includes drivers and vehicles who are not interfering with ICE activity.
Yeah, we've had a few judicial wins that are starting to come through on here, so that is a good sign for sure. And the second thing that happened is really quite extraordinary. A group of Minneapolis community police chiefs held a press conference in which they criticized the ICE agents and their tactics, specifically because some off duty police officers, all of which are person of color, have been stopped and harassed by
Uh-huh.
the ICE agents. And this is very rare, to see one form of law enforcement come out against another, but it really shows just how egregious the ICE deployments are in the Twin Cities. So maybe all of this scrutiny will help, actual law enforcement organizations come through to encourage ICE to chill out, pun intended.
Oh,
Bad.
ouch.
It's bad.
Yeah, that's a great thing. I watched that press conference. It
Yeah.
was amazing. And you could just see how worried and distraught the police chief who was leading it was, and
Yeah.
what he was witnessing, what his officers and other fellow officers off duty were experiencing. And one more quick note on ICE: its funding is up at the end of this month, and Congress is grappling with exactly how to move forward in the wake of this well documented chaos and violence that ICE is engaging in multiple U.S. cities. Progressives were pushing to completely defund ICE to halt its deportation efforts, but other Democrats have put together a compromise with Republicans to rein in some of ICE's abuses. However, Democratic leadership in the House announced yesterday it will not support this compromise and wants to instead risk another government shutdown versus giving even the slightest appearance of supporting ICE. This is going to be really interesting to watch. It's quite a dilemma.
Yeah, we're going to keep our eyes on that one. While I don't want to go through another shutdown, I don't think anybody does. It might be the price we have to pay to hold the brutality on
Yeah.
ICE against the American people to come to a stop. I mean, I don't know, Brian, it might be worth it. I don't know if you saw, but it seems ICE has murdered another person in addition to Renee Nicole Good. The autopsy
Mm.
of a detainee who ICE claimed died of natural resources while in their ICE facility instead showed that he was killed by strangulation. And now they're trying to immediately deport the two other detainees who claimed to witness this crime. So every day we're hearing more and more of these incidents where people are getting brutalized.
Yeah. And I just heard about the autopsy results last night. And also, there have now been a total of 7 people so far this year, just this year in 3 short weeks, who have died in some way while interacting with ICE. This is a band of poorly vetted and undertrained thugs armed with weapons and acting with, according to Vice President Vance, absolute immunity in terrorizing residents of American cities. Congress must act in some way to rein this in.
Yeah, I sure do hope that Congress wakes up. But I do have another ice pun for you, Brian, for this segue.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and speaking of ice,
I'm ready.
Trump's pursuit of the frozen territory of Greenland, which he reportedly referred to as Iceland, which should now be a red
Yes.
flag to all of us. I mean, come on.
That's how important it is.
Exactly, right? So he's constantly keeps
Wow.
referring to this as Iceland. Again, that should be a red flag to all of us. But it came to a rather anticlimactic outcome at the annual World Economic Forum that we talked about earlier. And although Trump came to the forum
Mhm.
threatening massive tariffs against the EU and Great Britain if he was denied control of Greenland, Iceland, whatever he wants to call it these days. I
Right.
mean, I know
Whatever that island is.
whatever that one is. The green one is ice one's I don't. But anyway, there was a meeting with the head of NATO, and instead that resulted in him walking back the tariff talk, and saying
Mhm.
that there's a framework of a plan again, but there really wasn't any mention of what this plan is. So right now it appears that he tacoed again. The Trump always chickens out, and so but I'm pretty happy about it. He could taco on that one
Yeah. Yeah, he can talk all he wants on crazy stuff like that. Nobody
for
wants
sure.
that. No Americans support that. And Trump and the Republicans are proving on a daily basis that they can't effectively govern the U.S., but that isn't stopping Trump from trying to take over neighboring sovereignties so he can screw up the lives of their citizens as well, I guess. And as I stated at the top, Governor Beshear was at the summit and was out there providing sane responses to Trump's speech, which can only be described as the ramblings of a demented patient with an active brain bleed.
It's true. But in all seriousness, Governor
I,
Bashir, right?
I
But in all
know it is.
anybody else would be immediately brought to the ER for sure.
Right. Maybe that's why he cut the funding at first for the mental health stuff, so they didn't come after him. Oh, we don't have any money to, I don't know. Might be
Yes,
something there.
that could be it. But Governor Bashir was out there, and Governor Bashir really, I think, represented us well. And his response was that this was dangerous, disrespectful, and unhinged. He said it was insulting to our allies. It was insulting to struggling Americans. He's out there saying that he fixed inflation. The economy is amazing and all of that. But, families are still hurting. And he's hurting the financial
Mhm.
security of our nation and our security. And, Governor Bashir also said, oh, and if Greenland is that important, is he calling it Iceland? So thank you, Governor Bashir.
Yeah, that was a great comment and so true.
Absolutely.
Whoa. And finally, Natalie,
Yes.
what weekly roundup would be complete without an update on the release of the Epstein files, which I think, in our opinion, is what drives all of these Trump distractions. And here's what's currently happening: the Department of Justice, the highest legal authority in the country, is breaking the law. Okay. The DOJ is over 30 days late in releasing the Epstein files as dictated by the Epstein Files Transparency Act, signed into law by Donald J. Trump. To compel the DOJ to follow the law, the bill sponsors, House Reps Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna, asked the court to assign a special master to supervise the DOJ in getting this done. But the judge determined the two congressmen did not have standing to bring the request, and it was denied. But the judge's ruling invited parties with appropriate standing to weigh in.
Yeah, and here's where the victims are again using their voice. So, in response to that, one of his victims, Lisa Phillips, filed an affidavit with the court supporting the appointment of a special master. And hopefully, it's been anticipated that other victims will follow suit because I think that their voices are really what resonates with people, reminding them that there are people behind this, people's lives were ruined because of it. So, this might be
That's
just what
right.
it takes to get the files released with the proper redactions to protect them. And considering how hard Trump and his DOJ are working to keep this from happening, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some pretty devastating consequences for Trump and his supporters when this comes out, especially the rich and the powerful.
Yep. Yeah, we need these files released. We have to see them. So this is good news, and it's good that the victims are finally maybe going to be able to push this, which maybe is what it's going to take. I hope.
Yeah, we need to hear them. We need to hear their voices. And
Right.
with that, Brian, we're going to conclude the Pluto Weekly Roundup, where the news is fast and facts are free. Until next time, stay curious, keep the facts in focus, never stop fighting for what matters, Brian. Peace out, everyone.